Chapter 1. First Contact. The air in the command center of the USS Andromeda was charged with a silent tension as the crew prepared for humanity's first official encounter with an alien species. Commander Jason Marek adjusted the communication panel in front of him, his focus absolute as he rehearsed the greeting in the Aslan language. Beside him, his second-in-command, Lieutenant Carl Anders, monitored the alien ship's approach with a wary eye. "Are we sure about the translations, Jason?" Carl asked, his voice low. Jason nodded, not taking his eyes off the screen. "I've gone over it a dozen times, Carl. It's as accurate as it can be, given what we know." The door to the command center hissed open, and Captain Elena Martinez entered, her presence commanding. "Report, gentlemen," she said briskly. Jason straightened. "The Aslan ship is in position, Captain. We're ready to initiate first contact protocols." Elena nodded. "Proceed, Commander." Taking a deep breath, Jason activated the communication system. The screen flickered and then stabilized, revealing the Aslan delegation on the bridge of their ship. The lead Aslan was tall, with shimmering skin and eyes that seemed to pierce through the void. "Greetings from Earth," Jason began in the Aslan language. "I am Commander Jason Marek. We welcome you in peace and hope for fruitful dialogue between our species." The Aslan leader, whose name translated to Speaker Talron, responded with a nod. "We receive your greetings, Commander Marek of Earth. I am Speaker Talron. We are prepared to engage in discussions as per the agreed protocols." Carl whispered to Jason, "Smooth start. Let's keep the momentum." Jason turned slightly towards Carl, giving a slight nod, then addressed Talron again. "We are honored by this opportunity. May I introduce Captain Elena Martinez, the commanding officer of this vessel." Elena stepped forward, her posture rigid but her voice warm. "Speaker Talron, it is a privilege to meet you. We hope today marks the beginning of a long and beneficial relationship for both our peoples." Speaker Talron inclined his head. "The honor is shared, Captain Martinez. Shall we proceed with the formal exchange?" Jason glanced at his notes, ensuring no detail was missed. "Yes, Speaker Talron. We have prepared a cultural exchange package as a token of goodwill," Carl interjected, handing a digital tablet to Jason. "It contains information about our planet, our history, and our aspirations." Talron's eyes flickered with what Jason hoped was curiosity. "And we have brought similar tokens from Aslan. It is our wish that through understanding there may come respect." As the formalities concluded, Jason felt a cautious optimism. He turned to Elena and Carl as the screen went dark. "Well, what do you think?" Elena allowed herself a small smile. "It's a good start, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. We need to be vigilant and perceptive." Carl nodded in agreement. "Right. We're in uncharted territory, but I think we're off to a solid start." Jason looked back at the screen, a thoughtful expression on his face. "Yes, a solid start indeed. Let's prepare for the next phase. There's much to do, and everything to learn." As they moved out of the command center to meet with their respective teams, the weight of their responsibility loomed large, but so did the promise of what was to come. Chapter 2. The Strain of Peace. Back in the conference room aboard the USS Andromeda, Jason and Carl reviewed the data received from the Aslans. Spread out on the table were holograms and digital documents detailing Aslan culture, technology, and astronomical knowledge. They were impressive, yet Jason couldn't shake off a nagging concern about their intentions. Carl, examining a hologram of Aslan architectural designs, broke the silence. "They're advanced, no doubt. But do you think they're holding back on us, Jason?" Jason sighed, toggling through a series of linguistic databases. It's hard to say. Their language is complex, layered with nuance that I think we're only scratching the surface of. The door slid open and Dr. Henry Liu, the ship's chief anthropologist, entered the room, his tablet in hand. "Gentlemen, I've been going over the cultural exchange material, and I have to agree with Jason. There's a deliberate opacity in what they're sharing." Carl frowned. "So, what's our play? We can't exactly accuse them of being secretive without proof." Henry nodded. "True, but we can adjust our approach. Dig deeper in our dialogues, ask more pointed questions." Jason appreciated Henry's input. "That's a good strategy. We'll need to tread carefully, though. We don't want to spook them or appear confrontational." The three men spent the next few hours devising questions and scenarios to probe the Asselins more effectively in their next meeting. They agreed on a soft but direct line of questioning that would hopefully reveal more about the Asselins' true stance on cooperation and exchange. Later, as the crew gathered in the mess hall for a brief respite, Captain Martinez joined them. She pulled up a chair next to Jason, her expression serious. "I just had a comm with Earth. Command. There's a lot riding on this, more than we initially thought. Political pressures are mounting, and they want tangible progress." Jason nodded, feeling the weight of her words. "We're doing our best, Elena. We might need to push harder in the negotiations." Elena looked around at her crew, her gaze settling on each face. "I trust you all to handle this with the professionalism you've always shown. But let's be clear, we need a breakthrough, whether in trade, technology sharing, or strategic alliances." Carl, always one to lighten the mood, chimed in. "No pressure, right?" The group shared a weary laugh, but the underlying tension was palpable. As the meeting ended, Jason, Carl, and Henry lingered behind. "Let's review the negotiation protocols again," Jason suggested. "If we're going to push, we need to be absolutely flawless in our approach." Carl was the first to stand, stretching his back. "I'll get the latest surveillance data. If we're looking for leverage, we might find it there." Henry nodded, already absorbed in his tablet. "And I'll dive deeper into their cultural artifacts. There might be clues about their negotiation techniques or societal values that we've missed." As they each set about their tasks, the enormity of their mission settled in once more. It wasn't just about making contact. It was about paving the way for future generations to interact with a completely alien civilization. The responsibility was immense, but so were the opportunities. Chapter 3. A Fateful Encounter. The corridors of the USS Andromeda were unusually quiet as Jason made his way to the observation deck. The ship was in orbit around a neutral moon, chosen as the meeting point for the next round of talks with the Asselins. As he entered the dimly lit room, he found Carl already there, staring out at the stars. "Early bird, huh?" Jason remarked, joining him by the large viewport. Carl shrugged, his eyes still fixed on the distant stars. "Couldn't sleep. Too much on my mind about tomorrow." Jason nodded in agreement. "It's weighing on all of us." This next meeting could set the tone for everything that follows. As they discussed potential strategies, Dr. Liu entered, his face brightening upon seeing them. "Ah, strategizing without me? Let me add some thoughts." The three of them spent the next hour bouncing ideas back and forth, each bringing their expertise to the table. They were deep in discussion when an unexpected chime sounded from the communication panel. It was an incoming personal message from Lyra, the Aslan cultural liaison. Jason frowned, puzzled by the timing. "Looks like I've got a late-night caller," Jason said, excusing himself to take the call in private. He accepted the transmission, and Lyra's image appeared on the screen. Her expression was serious, a stark contrast to her usual calm demeanor. "Commander Marek, I hope I am not intruding. I find myself in need of counsel on a matter of cultural significance. May we meet in person?" Jason was taken aback, but intrigued. "Of course, Lyra. I'll meet you in the neutral lounge in 10 minutes. As Jason met Lyra in the designated lounge, a space designed for casual interactions between crews, he noticed her discomfort. "What's on your mind, Lyra?" he asked as they sat across from each other at a small table. Lyra hesitated, her voice lower than usual. "I am tasked with understanding human emotion and reaction, yet I find it difficult. Your species' capacity for subtle emotional gradations is challenging. Could you explain how humans navigate disappointment and disagreement without direct confrontation?" Jason considered her question carefully. "It's complicated. Often, we try to find common ground, or we compromise. Avoiding direct conflict can help maintain relationships, even when we disagree." Lyra nodded slowly, absorbing his words. In Aslan culture, directness is valued above all. Subtlety is often seen as a weakness. This difference is perplexing to me. Seeing an opportunity for deeper connection, Jason shared more about human psychology, explaining concepts of empathy and emotional intelligence. Lyra listened intently, her gaze never wavering from his face. The conversation gradually became more personal, and they began to share stories from their respective lives. Lyra talked about her home world, describing its vast oceans and high cliffs. Jason was fascinated. "It sounds beautiful, Lyra. It's funny, isn't it? We're from different worlds, yet here we are, finding common ground." Lyra smiled, a rare expression for an Aslan. "Yes, Commander Marek. It is enlightening. I find our discussions enriching." They continued to talk for hours, not about politics or alliances, but about life, hopes, and even fears. As they parted ways that night, Jason felt a genuine connection had been forged, one that might prove crucial in the challenging days ahead. Back in his quarters, Jason reflected on the night's conversation. It was clear that this personal connection with Lyra could be pivotal not just for him, but potentially for all of humanity. The weight of it was immense, but so was the promise. Chapter 4. The Art of Human Patience. In the USS Andromeda's bustling control room, Jason gathered with his team for an early morning briefing. Carl and Henry were already there, along with Major Tom Bennett, the security officer. Maps of potential diplomatic sites and profiles of Aslan delegates flickered on the screens around them. Jason initiated the meeting. "We've got a delicate balance to strike today." Lyra's insights last night highlighted some key differences in how our cultures handle negotiations. We need to be assertive but not aggressive, patient yet not passive. Tom, ever the tactician, chimed in. "I understand the need for a soft approach, but we should also prepare for them trying to push our buttons. They know we're eager for a deal." Carl nodded, adjusting his datapad. "Exactly. Let's role-play some scenarios. Jason, you be the Aslans this time. Throw at us what you think they'll likely bring to the table." For the next hour, the room was alive with mock negotiations. Jason, embodying the role of an Aslan negotiator, presented challenging demands and scenarios, pushing Carl and Henry to respond with tact and precision. "More resources for less technology," Jason asserted, his voice firm. "Why should we offer more when your needs are greater?" Carl paused, considering his response. "While it's true our needs are pressing, a balanced exchange ensures ongoing cooperation. We value a long-term relationship over short-term gain." Henry, watching the exchange, added, "Let's also emphasize our willingness to share educational initiatives. It's not just about resources and tech. It's about building a foundation for future exchanges. Tom reviewed the security protocols. And let's not forget, any agreement must include strict confidentiality clauses. We can't afford leaks on either side. As the simulation wrapped up, Jason felt more confident about their preparation. Good work, everyone. Remember, it's not just what we say but how we say it. Let's keep our cool, no matter what. Later, as Jason and Carl walked to the negotiation room, they went over their strategy one last time. Remember, they're not just listening to our words. They're watching our body language, our facial expressions. Every detail matters, Carl reminded him. Jason nodded, feeling the weight of the moment. Let's do this. The negotiation room was stark, with only a large oval table and two delegations facing each other. Speaker Tauren and his team entered, their expressions unreadable. Jason greeted them with a nod. Speaker Tauren, we appreciate your willingness to continue these talks. We believe both our peoples stand to gain from today's discussion. Tauren replied, his voice even, Commander Marek, we are also interested in fruitful outcomes. Let us proceed. As the talks unfolded, Jason and his team methodically presented their proposals, emphasizing mutual benefits and long-term gains. They navigated Tauren's probing questions and countered with well-prepared responses, always maintaining a calm demeanor. When the meeting adjourned several hours later, both sides had outlined potential areas of agreement and identified issues needing further discussion. As they left the room, Carl leaned over to Jason. How do you think it went? Jason considered it for a moment. It's a step forward. We kept our cool, presented our case well, and they listened. That's about as much as we could hope for today. Back on the observation deck, watching the stars, Jason reflected on the day's events. The art of patience had indeed been their greatest ally, and it would need to remain so in the days to come. Chapter 5. Crossing the Line. The negotiation process had been grueling, and as the delegates left the negotiation room, Jason felt the tension hanging heavily in the air. He and Carl retreated to the Andromeda's small café, a place designed for casual conversation away from the formal settings of diplomacy. Carl ordered 2 coffees and slid into the booth across from Jason. You think they're finally warming up to us, or is it just more strategic posturing? He asked, stirring his drink. Jason took a sip of his coffee, his mind racing through the day's events. It's hard to tell with the Arcelans. They're cautious, methodical. But I think today we made real progress. Just then, Dr. Liu and Major Bennett joined them, each carrying their own thoughts from the day. Henry was quick to join the conversation. I noticed a slight shift in their body language today. Less rigid, more open. It's subtle, but it's there. Tom, ever the skeptic, added, let's not get ahead of ourselves. They're trained diplomats, just like us. Every move is calculated. The group continued to dissect the day's negotiations, exploring every angle and planning for the next round. As they talked, Jason's communicator buzzed. It was a message from Lyra, asking to meet him privately once more. Excusing himself, Jason headed to the observation deck, the designated meeting spot. As he arrived, he found Lyra looking out at the vast expanse of space. Her posture was relaxed, but there was a seriousness to her demeanor that immediately caught his attention. Jason, thank you for coming, Lyra began, turning to face him. I find myself at a crossroads, and I need your guidance. Jason nodded, encouraging her to continue. It's about our negotiations. My superiors are pressing for advantages that I believe are unfair to your people. I am torn between my duty and what I've come to understand about justice through our conversations, Lyra confessed. Jason listened intently, weighing his words carefully. Lyra, it's important to stand up for what you believe is right, even if it's difficult. Your integrity is worth more than any deal. Lyra sighed, a sound of mixed relief and concern. I feared you'd say that. It means I may have to challenge my own leaders. Jason stepped closer, his expression supportive. You won't be alone. We value what you've brought to these negotiations. Honesty, insight. Let's find a way to make this work for both our peoples without compromising our principles. Encouraged by Jason's words, Lyra nodded. I needed to hear that. Thank you, Jason. Their conversation drifted to lighter topics, the tension easing as they shared more about their personal lives, their dreams, and even their fears about the future. As they parted, there was a mutual feeling of deep respect and a burgeoning friendship that transcended their official roles. Returning to his quarters, Jason pondered the complexities of interstellar diplomacy. His relationship with Lyra had started professionally, but was now entering uncharted territory, both personally and politically. As he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, he realized how much he had crossed the professional line. But perhaps, in this case, it was exactly what was needed to bridge the gap between two vastly different civilizations. Chapter 6. The Breaking Point. As the negotiations reached a critical juncture, the strain was palpable among the crew of the USS Andromeda. In the main conference room, Jason, Carl, and Major Bennett prepared for what could be the most contentious session yet. Speaker Tauren and his delegation had signaled tough stances on several issues in their last communiqué, and the air was thick with anticipation. Carl looked over to Jason as they set up their materials. This is it, huh? Do or die. Jason adjusted the interface on the table. Something like that. We need to hold our ground today. Tom Bennett, checking the security feeds, chimed in. We're secure on all fronts. Let's keep our focus on the table. As the Aslan delegation entered, the room's temperature seemed to drop, a testament to the tension that walked in with them. Speaker Tauren greeted them with a nod, his demeanor unreadable. Let us begin, Tauren said, his voice carrying a sharp edge. We have reviewed your proposals, and we find them lacking in areas critical to our interests. Jason met his gaze steadily. And we have concerns with the demands that seem disproportionate to the benefits you offer. Perhaps we need to reassess our priorities and find a middle ground. The discussion quickly escalated, with the Aslans pushing hard on access to human technology and resources. Jason and Carl worked seamlessly, countering with calibrated offers, trying to steer the conversation toward compromise. Henry, observing the dynamics, leaned over to whisper to Jason during a brief pause. They're pressing hard, Jason. Maybe too hard. Something doesn't add up. Jason nodded, signaling Henry to keep a close watch on any nonverbal cues that might give them an edge. The turning point came unexpectedly. Speaker Tauren, perhaps sensing a deadlock, shifted his tone. Commander Marek, let us be frank. We are prepared to end these talks without an agreement if our core demands are not met. Jason paused, choosing his words carefully. Ending these talks empty-handed would be a missed opportunity for both our people. However, pressuring us into one-sided terms is not the way forward. The room fell silent as the implications of Jason's words hung in the air. Carl broke the silence. Perhaps a short recess is in order. A moment to consider the long-term benefits of a fair agreement. Tauren nodded stiffly. Very well. We will reconvene in 1 hour. As the Aslans left the room, Jason turned to his team. We need to prepare for the next round. Let's gather more data and come back stronger. Carl, Henry, and Tom huddled around the table, pulling up historical data and precedents that could bolster their position. They analyzed the Aslan's previous diplomatic engagements, looking for patterns or weaknesses. "Look here," Henry pointed out on his tablet, "their economy relies heavily on technology trades. They can't afford to walk away any more than we can." Armed with new strategies, Jason felt a renewed sense of purpose. "Let's use this. We offer technology exchange on terms that ensure mutual benefits. We make it clear we're not just suppliers but partners." When the negotiations resumed, Jason laid out their refined proposals with confidence, emphasizing partnership and long-term gains over short-term exploitation. Tauren listened, his expression slowly changing as the potential benefits of Jason's proposal became clear. As the session ended, there was a cautious optimism in the air. Both delegations had moved closer to an agreement, driven by a newfound respect for the other's needs and constraints. Walking back to his quarters, Jason felt the weight of the day's tensions lift slightly. They were on the verge of something significant, a deal that could define humanity's place in the galaxy. The stakes were high, but now, so were the possibilities. Chapter 7. Humanity's Patience Expires. In the sterile environment of the USS Andromeda's primary negotiation chamber, the tension was palpable as the human delegates prepared for a potentially transformative session. The previous rounds had sharpened their strategies, but today they needed to deliver results that could change the course of human-Aslan relations. Jason took his place at the head of the table, with Carl and Major Bennett to his side. Dr. Liu was also there, his insights into Aslan culture proving invaluable. As they settled in, the Aslan delegation entered, their steps measured and faces unreadable. Carl leaned in towards Jason as they prepared their devices. "You ready for this? It's do or die now." Jason nodded, his expression calm but his nerves taut. "We're ready. We know what we need to do." As Speaker Tauren initiated the session, Jason interrupted politely but firmly. "Speaker Tauren, before we proceed, I think it's essential we address the underlying concerns that have brought us to this point." Tauren raised an eyebrow, a sign of intrigue among Aslans. "And what concerns might those be, Commander Marek?" Jason stood, his voice resonating with a quiet strength. "It's about fairness and respect, Speaker. Throughout these talks, we've felt a push from your side that borders on exploitation. It's time to discuss these terms on equal footing." The room fell silent. The Aslans were not used to such direct confrontation. Carl watched anxiously, knowing this was a risky move. Tauren, after a moment's pause, replied, "You speak of equality, yet your offers have been cautious at best. How do you propose we resolve this disparity?" Jason responded, "By being honest about our capabilities and needs. We're prepared to share technology and resources, but not at the expense of our security and future. We propose a new framework based on mutual benefit, not one-sided demands." Major Bennett then chimed in, "We've prepared a detailed proposal that outlines these terms. It includes joint ventures that benefit both our species, allowing us to grow together rather than apart." Henry added, "And from a cultural standpoint, we're offering more than just resources. We're offering a partnership that includes exchange programs and collaborative projects that will help bridge our understanding of each other." Tauren considered their words, his team whispering among themselves. Finally, he nodded. "Show us this proposal. We are here to find a path forward, after all." As Jason and his team presented the new terms, the Aslans listened intently. The atmosphere shifted slowly from confrontational to cooperative, as both sides began to see the potential of a truly reciprocal relationship. When the meeting adjourned, there was a cautious optimism in the air. Jason and Carl debriefed in a quiet corner of the room. Carl, visibly relieved, let out a long breath. "That was a gamble, Jason. But it paid off." Jason, looking over the room where they had perhaps just changed the future, agreed. It was a necessary risk. No species will ever forget the moment when humans finally lost their patience and demanded the respect they deserved. Let's hope this is the beginning of a new era. As they prepared for the final round of negotiations, there was a sense of accomplishment, but also the knowledge that the hardest part of their mission was perhaps yet to come. The challenge of building trust and implementing the treaty loomed large, but for the first time, it seemed wholly possible. Chapter 8. A New Dawn. As dawn cast its first light over the USS Andromeda, the crew gathered in the main conference room for what they hoped would be the final round of negotiations. The atmosphere was markedly different. The hard edges of previous meetings had softened into something that hinted at mutual respect and understanding. Jason stood at the head of the table with Carl, Henry, and Major Bennett flanking him. They reviewed the latest draft of the treaty, a document that had evolved significantly from their initial proposals. Carl, looking over the document, nodded in approval. "This looks solid, Jason. Balanced and fair. You think they'll go for it?" Jason, scanning the room as the Aslan delegation entered, replied, "I think they will. We've come to understand each other better, and we've addressed their core concerns without compromising our own." Speaker Talron approached with a more relaxed demeanor than they had seen before. "Commander Merrick, I believe we are close to something both our species can be proud of." "I agree, Speaker Talron," Jason said as they took their seats. "Shall we go through the document together?" As they discussed each clause, it was clear that both sides had moved beyond mere negotiation to collaboration. They clarified language on technology exchange, resource sharing, and joint scientific ventures, ensuring that every point was transparent and equitable. Henry, who had been instrumental in framing the cultural exchange programs, shared his enthusiasm. "The educational and cultural exchanges will be groundbreaking. We're not just forming an alliance. We're bridging our worlds." Tom added, focusing on the security aspects, "and the mutual defense clause provides a solid framework for peace and stability. It's a strong deterrent against potential threats to both our peoples." The final hours passed in detailed discussions, with minor adjustments made to ensure clarity and fairness. When the last signature was placed on the digital document, a sense of accomplishment filled the room. Speaker Talron stood, extending his hand to Jason. "Commander Merrick, this treaty is a testament to what can be achieved when we look beyond differences to the common good. I am thankful for your patience and diligence." Jason shook his hand firmly. "Thank you, Speaker Talron. It's been a challenging journey, but well worth it. We look forward to a prosperous future together." After the Aslans left, the human delegation remained, allowing the gravity of their achievement to sink in. Carl clapped Jason on the back. "You did it, man. We did it. This is going to change everything." Jason smiled, feeling a mix of relief and anticipation. "It's just the beginning, Carl. The real work starts now, making sure this treaty lives up to its promise." Later, as the Andromeda prepared to leave orbit, Jason and Lyra met one last time in the observation deck. They looked out at the stars, their next destinations unknown yet filled with potential. Lyra turned to Jason. "I never thought I'd say this, but I'm going to miss these negotiations. It's been enlightening working with you." Jason nodded, feeling the bittersweet tug of departure. "I feel the same, Lyra. Remember, this isn't goodbye. It's just the start of something new." As the ship began its journey back to Earth, Jason watched the planet they had come to know shrink into the distance. A new dawn was indeed upon them, promising not only a future of shared prosperity but of deep interstellar friendship.